Dear Thai, dear friends, Sangha, um, as we begin this morning, I plan to talk about a trauma-informed practice or trauma-sensitive mindfulness. But just as we begin, I'd like to make an acknowledgement. Can everyone hear me? Okay. I'd like to make an acknowledgement with the deepest of gratitude. And I'm just going to invite us all, with your feet, if you're sitting, or with your hand, touch the ground. Just touch the ground. As we honor the land under our bodies and the ancestors whose home we are practicing on for this 6-day retreat. And we are on the traditional territory of the Skokomish people. They're comprised of 9 groups, and the Tuhuya are one of those groups. So we ask that our practice, the depth of our practice, bring substance to true healing and reconciliation. If I may, I'd like to open with a practice, and we'll just jump right into the practice, and then I'll do a little explaining about it later on down the road. But this is called orienting, and if you're not familiar with it, I want you to know that you've done a little bit of it in the last couple of mornings with Ron in our morning yoga, our morning practice. So beginning with our eyes open, just begin to pay attention to our environment with a soft gaze. So we're not necessarily looking at detail, just that soft gaze. And very slowly begin to organize our eyes and our ears, our head and our neck, and our shoulders. And in one slow, fluid motion back and forth, we look to one side, just what's comfortable. And then coming back, slowly, taking in the other side. And simply noticing shapes and colors. If it's pleasurable, if it's uncomfortable. So continue left to right as you orient to this present moment. And at the same time, tracking any shifts we may be feeling in the gut, in our sensations. Coming to center. If you're comfortable, allow your eyes to close and just let any stimulation that you've taken in settle. And once again, if this is comfortable, opening our eyes and allowing our gaze to come to the group. And if eye contact or face-to-face feels a little too much in this moment, just kind of scan maybe their feet. But whatever feels right in this moment. And now just allow our bodies to settle, inviting the mind to come into this present moment. Just touching our heart with our hand, heart center with our hands. There. And just take note, we can have some comments later on. Just take note what that was like for you. So this field is formally called trauma-sensitive mindfulness. The founder, I guess, or the one who wrote the book is David Treleaven, and we owe a great deal of gratitude to him. David Treleaven is a practitioner, a psychotherapist, a somatic experiencing psychotherapist. We'll give you a little bit more information about that, but very much a body-mind. And he he realized that for many people, sitting on the cushion, following our breath, the very thing that we do to alleviate our suffering, for some can activate more suffering. For some is difficult. People who have whose nervous systems are highly activated, sitting and following the breath can be difficult. So in this next period of time, we're going to look at that a little bit about what a way to view this, a way to view these things that we call anxiety or depression, rather than viewing them the way that the mental health system would view it. We're going to view it through the nervous system, and which is what trauma-informed mindfulness always it does. Trauma-informed mindfulness, there's always choice. So notice. I hope I said if you feel comfortable, close your eyes. And that some people don't want to close their eyes. So that might not feel safe. So we would want to offer a variety of anchors. If the breath is a resource for you right now, notice that. Otherwise, you may want to just feel your sit bones on the cushion, or feel your feet on the ground, or perhaps an object, an image. So always allowing more choice. This trauma-informed mindfulness is kind of an intersection. There's another intersection of neuroscience, of something called interpersonal biology, and Buddhist psychology. And interpersonal biology, it's kind of a lofty term. It's interpersonal, it's relational. It's about all of us. Neural, it involves our brains. And biology, it involves the whole of our bodies. So very much like Plum Village practice, Plum Village practice is deeply relational, and it's deeply embodied. Ty knew that right from the get-go. Ty, our teacher, developed this particular form of Zen out of the fires of the War of Vietnam. Those aren't my words. That came from Lotus in a Sea of Fire. But Ty saw that so many people were suffering and struggling, and that actually sitting on the cushion, first of all, the need was greater. We needed engaged Buddhism to be out there, but also that traditional form perhaps no eye contact, or some of the ways that we have been trained in meditation were difficult for all of these people who were really suffering from trauma. So he got people singing, and perhaps holding hands as we did walking meditation. And as we've talked about here, our noble silence is a companionable silence, where we might make eye contact at the breakfast table and smile, but we don't move into chit chat. We connect. And that eye to eye contact is that in itself can be a healing force. I did this similar, almost, talk in the spring in a small retreat that we had. And I can't tell you how nervous I was. I was so nervous. And every time I just felt like, I could feel it well up in my belly, I'd look at John, or I'd look at you, Michael. And just that connection and that smile, I could feel it in my body. I could just feel things settle. And it was manageable again, and I would carry on till it creeped up again. I'm okay today. So the intention here is to help people, to help all of us to get a sense and to better understand how our nervous system is functioning as we sit on our cushions. And if we want to translate this, like things like regulation of the nervous system, and that if we want to translate it out of somatic experiencing speak and bring it into Buddhism, we would say this is right effort. the way that we speak and how we come into our mindfulness, and how we learn not to feed those unwholesome seeds within us and instead nourish the seeds of well being within us. So, we really want to plump up the well being seeds within us. It's not enough just to keep the ill being away. We start with resourcing. And this morning, the orientation, that's a resourcing practice. Resourcing practice, they calm us in that. There's going to be some practices that we'll talk about today that are calming, that are grounding. There's going to be some that are a little bit stimulating, that if we're kind of in that flat zone, we want to bring the nervous system back online, bring ourselves back into well-being. And I must give a nod that Plum Village now recently has the Embrace Sangha and training. And the Embrace, it's a long, here we go, embodying mindfulness-based resilience to awaken community empowerment. That's a form of saying trauma-sensitive mindfulness is actually being practiced and recognized in all of the monasteries. I want to give you a little bit of an overview of trauma. It's a big word, trauma, and it's a well-used word. Sometimes we use it, like if I've stubbed my toe. That's not traumatizing, but it really hurts. So I want to just give a little bit of an idea around what we mean by trauma, and I want to expand that because it's not just about trauma. It's about any way when we feel overwhelmed. So the prevalence of trauma, and this comes from a course I took with David Trelevin on trauma-sensitive mindfulness. 9 out of 10 of us, 9 out of 10 people, or 90% of us have lived through something traumatic. We've lived through something traumatic. 8%, approximately, of the entire population will go on to experience PTSD. So somewhere in the middle, between 8% and 90%, there are a whole lot of varying symptoms, disturbances, and that don't necessarily fit into the criteria for PTSD, but they're disturbing nonetheless. So as I mentioned, a lot of us, many people come to practice because we're suffering. We're talking about suffering and liberation in this 6 days, and that all of us suffer in our own ways, and we've learned, come to meditation. This will help alleviate our suffering. And for many it does. For many, you can just sit down and follow your breath, and yeah, it alleviates the suffering. But for a lot of us, our nervous systems they run a little bit differently. And it's not very helpful. And particularly, we have a long-standing tradition where a teacher, if in an interview you're asked, how's your practice? Well, I'm really agitated on the cushion. I'm really agitated. I feel nervous. And we're often very kindly invited, would it be okay to sit with that? Is it manageable? Can you notice that? And the truth is, for some people, no, it's not manageable. It's too much. And that's what we're talking about with trauma-sensitive mindfulness, because every one of us is going to struggle on the cushion. And what did John say? Good, or you said, good. That's good. Sometimes I put extra stuff that I don't need. I want to say this, though, because Hans Selye, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, he's a Canadian, and he's the founder of stress theory. And his definition, he calls stress the non-specific response of the body to any demand for change. And he says that the nervous system doesn't distinguish whether it's positive or negative stress. And so when we're looking at trauma, this is referring to an experience that is overwhelming, or it's beyond our capacity to cope with it. Sometimes we talk about large T trauma and small t trauma. So a large T trauma are the things that any one of us would recognize. Combat, living in an unsafe environment, childhood abuse, neglect, poverty, racism, an accident, the loss of a loved one, the death of a loved one. All of us would nodding our heads like, absolutely, that's trauma. So we put that under the, and there's others. There's more. I don't have time to say, to go for too much farther. Small t trauma. This is the everyday things. This is what happens to each of us. The way that our hopes and dreams are thwarted along the path of life. We're wanting to do something, wanting that job, didn't get it. So once, twice, we have a few of those disappointments, and we all will. We chalk it up to disappointment and we get over it. But if we consistently are thwarted from our needs and our wants being met, that in itself becomes a trauma. And the symptoms are very similar, are no different really, to someone who may have experienced another trauma. The It's not the event per se. It's not the catastrophic event that's going to determine whether or not it's traumatic. It's the individual's capacity to defend against against the event. And so that's why it's important for us not to compare. I mean, somebody might be in a very major accident. That's traumatic. Someone else may have their ankle bit by a dog, and we think, but that could be traumatic. We don't know how terrified that person is to a dog. And we also don't know what leg hold trap. And the leg hold traps are the things we step on in life that, boom, all of a sudden, and they're tethered to something in our past. And that past comes up into the present moment. And sometimes when it comes up into the present moment, and this could be a very early experience, we start to experience from the developmental age that we were when that event happened. So if somebody offends us, somebody hurts our feelings, and all of a sudden there's this, our response is, like we can barely speak, we may be developmentally in about a 3 or 4-year-old place right in that moment. It's triggers, we call them triggers, you've heard of that word. So we want to find ways to bring ourselves back into the here and now. Trauma-sensitive mindfulness is one of these ways. So now I'm going to do something. It's a little bit fun, and it involves 2 volunteers. And I've got one who I've already asked, and could I have someone on this side to hold some string? There you go. You're going to hold this string. And I didn't know how much I would need. Obviously, I don't need that much. And then you're going to hold another string on your other hand. Same person will hold it. There you go. And there you go. And so what I'm going to ask you to do, that's right, is to hold them sort of evenly into parallel lines up and down. So up and down, that's right. Make them a little skinnier right now. And believe me, I won't ask you to hold your arms like this for too long. Has anyone ever heard of the window of tolerance, or familiar with that term? Or yeah, okay, yeah. It's also sometimes called the window of resilience, or in our context, I sometimes call it the window of equanimity. But in this window, so maybe a titch, a little, yeah, there we go. So when we have well-being, when we are okay with what's happening in the world, even if the world is on fire, which it is, but we've touched peace within ourselves, then right in the middle of this window, there's a wave, and that's our nervous system. And imagine it's a green light. And it's our optimal, you can't see this because that's why that is. It's the optimal arousal zone. That means the window is saying, I'm okay. I'm not saying everything's okay, because I don't even know when that is. But I'm saying at this moment, I'm okay with what's happening in the world. And my nervous system is regulated. That's what we call regulation. Okay. When we sit on if your arms are getting tired, you can put them down. Okay. Oh, at your back? Are you? um, let's say at this moment a bird flew and hit the window, and we all kind of did that, right? We would all of a sudden jump out of that place, and we would be up above our window, okay? And then let's say one of us looked and went, "Oh, he's okay. I just saw him fly away. He's okay." And then our parasympathetic, then we'd be like, "Oh, thank goodness," and we would come back in our window. So those are the kind of acute things. Someone's cut me off in traffic, or that. Oftentimes, so this area in the middle, this is the area of safety, and I'm going to add. I should have actually said that this work is a few people, but Daniel Siegel has developed he's a psychiatrist and a practitioner, and he developed this, and somebody else named Steve Porges, and I'm going to be kind of looking at what happens inside when this is happening. So in our body, all here, the vagus nerve. You familiar with the vagus nerve? It's okay. It's a very important nerve in our body. So all up and down here, that's our vagus nerve. I'm sure yeah, okay. Up above the window is up here. So the vagus nerve comes up, innervates the heart, the lungs, the neck, the face, the facial, the social engagement muscles of the face. That's how I calmed down when I looked at John and Mike when I was getting nervous. I looked and I saw safety, and all of a sudden my nervous system went back down into the middle there. If I had looked at somebody going, I I'm not sure what I might leave. um, so up here is sympathetic arousal. If it's met with a sense of danger. We are often in sympathetic arousal, but it might be happiness. Say we were all out there playing volleyball, there'd be a lot of sympathetic arousal going on, but it's met with a sense of community, of safety, of connection. But if I feel unsafe, and it doesn't matter if it's real or imagined, if I feel unsafe, I'm going to start rising up. Or some of us will go down under. And down here, we call this the dorsal vagal. This here in the middle is the ventral vagal. That means the I'm okay in the moment. Up here is high sympathetic arousal. Down here is dorsal vagal. Used to be called, up here is fight or flight. Down there is, we formerly called it freeze, and we don't use that in trauma literature anymore. We call it the collapse, the immobility. And because freeze sounds like a deer in the headlights, and it's not that at all. We could be moving around, we could be running corporations and that, but we could be very numb and very shut down. You can put your hands down if it's sore. Okay, okay, all right. We want to alleviate suffering, not cause it. Okay. So when we're on our cushion, when we're in meditation, it is normal, I guess, expected, common, that we start to go. I can't actually reach the string, but I want. No, thanks. Oh, thanks. So all of a sudden, I'm on my cushion, and feelings arise. Maybe those feelings, maybe anger arise or fear arise, and I'm up here, right? So I'm high up in my optimal arousal zone, but I'm still in the zone because now you can go back. Thanks. Because I'm aware that anger is present. I'm aware that I'm here and now. I know I'm safe. I'm just mad, or I'm fearful, or I'm sad. But my feet are in the present moment. My feet are with the Sangha. I know where I am. If it be so, it's manageable. May not feel good, but it's manageable. When we pop up into the fight or flight, neurologically, there's a bit of a hijacking in the brain. And all of a sudden, we're in our old reptilian brain, and we're just looking at getting away from danger and seeking safety. And so, all of the beauty of this part of the brain, where we have empathy and understanding and emotional regulation, we can calm ourselves down. There's 9 domains, I'm not going to get into them, but thinking of empathy and understanding and that goes out the window. So, if I'm in that state and there's an issue, let's say, with my partner, probably not a good time to have a conversation because I will be unskillful. The same with when we drop down. When we drop down into the freeze, it's the nervous system has kind of gone, it's like when mammals go deep under the water, the metabolism slows down. So when we drop down there, and if we stay there chronically, say in depression or something, quite often people will find they have issues with the gut, the bowels, reproductive organs, and that things slow down. A lot of things like IBS, and that when we're chronically in this collapsed or immobility phase. So the idea is we want to have practices, and this is we're talking about meditation right now, and I'm just going to say more in the realm of psychotherapy. If somebody is chronically up here in a hyper-aroused state, we want to be able to help them down-regulate, bring themselves back down into the window of tolerance. Regulate's a pretty weird word for these beautiful bodies of ours. I think of it more as restoring the rhythm of my nervous system. Our bodies are rhythms. They're respiratory systems, they're circulatory systems, and the nervous system. We want to come back down into the window. If somebody is in a flat state, immobilized, we want to stimulate the nervous system a bit. We want to restore the life force and have them feeling alive again. And the goal of it is, okay, open the window. the goal is to have a larger window of tolerance. So it's not about solving an individual problem of the day. It's about expanding our capacity to hold the complexity of our lives and not be swept away or overwhelmed by them. You could put the string down now. Thank you. So in our practice, we can use the window of tolerance so that we can begin to notice when am I coming out of my window of tolerance or my window of equanimity? When am I getting a little bit too anxious? Or am I getting drowsy? Am I getting flat? And that. So one of the ways from our practice that we can look at this is the 5 skandhas. So our bodies, our emotions, our perceptions, our mental formations, consciousness, we can look through the window of tolerance look at where we are in the window of tolerance through that. So with the skandhas, if I'm on the cushion and I'm noticing and I'm wondering, is it pleasant? Is it unpleasant? Is it neutral? My perception, are these familiar? Is this an old habit energy? Oh, there's that thought again. I'm not a public speaker. There's that old thought, right? Is it true? Does it have to be true? So the Buddha taught us many resources. The skandhas invites us to step out of our sort of our left brain, the narratives that we have, that autobiographical narrative of this is the way it is, or this is how I am, because that's the way my parents raised me, or something. But when we've experienced something overwhelming or something traumatic, that gets kind of lodged in the right hemisphere of the brain, the lower right hemisphere of the brain. And so in the realm of sensation, which is why oftentimes in many different yoga, um, therapy, certainly even in education, in medicine, and that we find, of course, in medicine because it's the body, but we find people inviting us to notice where we feel that in the body. What's happening in your body right now? So that we can break the trance of that thought, of that story, and come into, I might be spitting angry at something, some situation that has made me mad, and I can weave a web of who done me wrong or why I'm angry or why I'm justified in my anger, or I can come back and just notice, what does anger feel like in my body right now? Oh my gosh, my face is hot, my jaw is tight, whatever it is. Or if I'm sad, what does sadness feel like right now? It feels like a big gaping hole in my belly. Right? Or the chest, I don't want to joke. The chest, commonly we feel fear, we feel our angst or anxiety in the chest. So we move over into the right brain. Lower right brain is sensation. And then just above that, we move to sensory motor. So sometimes we will make gestures. If somebody is coming too close, a gesture might be, right? So from the sensory motor, from motion comes emotion. So our emotional life, another one of the skandhas. What's the emotion that I'm feeling? Because the emotion isn't right or wrong. The perception might be right or wrong. Perception could be I don't know if I want to say right or wrong, but the perception could be skewed, right? And so from emotion, then we can come into imagery, and that's another place of beautiful, beautiful healing is the image. And when someone says to me, "Oh, I'm not very good. I don't know how to do imagery," I ask them if they know how to worry, because worry is a thought, a really solid thought, a habit energy. We're pretty sure it's going to happen. Hasn't happened yet, but it could. It just could. Um, and we can just as easily use resources for that. Right? We don't have to get caught. I want to mention another resource that comes from the Buddha and that we have all been taught in our practice, and that's the discourse on the full awareness of breathing. And in that, it's a long discourse, but particularly in the second section is the 16 phrases that we use. It sounds like a contradiction because it's that of mine, because it starts with the breathing in, I'm aware I'm breathing in. Breathing out, I'm aware I'm breathing out. And it comes to aware of a long breath and aware of a short breath. So no one is telling us to control our breathing or change our breathing. If I'm breathing in a short breath, I'm breathing in a short breath. I'm just noticing it without judgment. And then it guides us so through the breath and through the body, and then through our mental formations, our mind. Sensation invites us into calming the body and inviting joy. Once again, plumping up those resources, plumping up those positive seeds. And this is what we call right effort, where we're coming into our mindfulness and we're learning to cultivate and nourish those wholesome seeds and therefore promote well-being and safety. Resources can be a number of things. The resources are interpersonal, so safe and attuned relationships are absolutely a resource. The traditions that we have in our lives, rituals, rites of passage, we have many practices. And when we follow the form, Eileen Kira always said, hold the form and the form will hold you. These traditions that we have create a safety. By day 3, we kind of all know what we're doing, right? So pretty much. So interpersonal, intrapersonal, within myself. So that would be, sorry, the intrapersonal went too far, went ahead of myself, are the connection, is my connection to myself and to my true awakened nature. It could be physical, mental, or emotional. And I'm asking myself, what's stabilizing? What's grounding? And that's where the imagery, symbols, and metaphors, sorry for all the people who have to use whiteout. It's the it's the interpersonal that's the attuned relationships, traditions, and rites of passage. And then something so important and something that we're just drinking up here is the eco-personal, and that's our connection to the earth. These are our the animals, the deer that come out and chew those apples at night or early in the morning, the trees, the plants, the waterways. And so on the cushion, resources might be what are some of the specific modifications that we could use? Sometimes we have one fellow in our Sangha who needs to lay down because of his back. So we just make sure that there's a space where he can lay down and he can't do walking meditation. So he's out of the path. We just modify. You just do it. That's what we do. So our body posture. One of the things in somatic experiencing that happens is is returning to rhythm. We're wanting to restore the rhythm. And so there's something that's called pendulating. And in pendulating, we are doing a very sort of our sit bones. It's like we are shifting the weight from one sit bone to the next, shifting sit bones. It's not a big movement. It's a very small range of motion, and it's just subtle enough that it can be done on the meditation cushion in our practice. I don't know that it would fly in every, sometimes we've got some traditions of how we are supposed to sit, but really, if we can just pendulate a little bit. One morning in morning light, Michael, you mentioned something quite beautiful about the way breathing in, breathing out. So that's a bit of a different pendulating, isn't it? The body is just coming forward and back, but it's rhythm. It's restoring rhythm, and the nervous system likes that. It does, our bodies do not like to be scared stiff. That's like the death state. I wonder if we could do a practice right now on accessing a state of vitality. Just for the moment, if you want to put your pens and things away. So just take a moment and notice the felt sense in your body. What's happening in your body right now? And now, if you could recall and maybe savor a moment of well being, a moment of joy that you felt in, say, the last couple of days, somewhere on this retreat, a moment of joy, well being, or vitality. And if nothing comes to mind, it's absolutely okay to use your imagination, embodied imagination. And now invite all the senses you feel to recall as you recall this experience. What were the smells? What were the sounds? What did I see? Perhaps there was a taste. And just allow this to ferment for a moment in the body. And now begin to scan your body, perhaps up and down your arms, your legs, hands, the face, the jaw, neck and shoulder. And now allow that to settle. And simply noticing, has the felt sense shifted for you in any way as you remembered those moments? And in just a few moments, we'll have some sharing time, some questions or comments. But there's one little piece that I hope to talk about again. It's around trauma-sensitive mindfulness in our practice and our practice of Dharma sharing. And so in our practice, our period of Dharma, in most practices, our period of Dharma sharing is like it's like council practice or like circle practice. It's both uninterrupted and unresponded to. So we don't offer advice. Oh, I had that, and this is what I did, and it was helpful. We don't do that. We don't give advice, and we don't verbally do anything. But what we do is we hold the space. We hold it with our eyes. We hold you with our eyes, with our presence, with our deep listening, and I believe with our somatic empathy that our bodies are attuning in that moment. Sometimes, actually, a bell would be nice right now. Thank you. Sometimes in Dharma sharing, we're sharing something deeply, deeply painful. And if we're new to practice, or if there is trauma responses, it can feel kind of isolating and alone to share something, and it's met with deadpan silence. You may not notice the way that we are holding you, and it can be difficult. We have a morning light, and in our Victoria Sangha, if something so tender is shared, we invite a bell, or we at least ask, invite a bell for you. But it's not for you. The bell is for all of us, because the bell helps each of us to regulate. Sometimes if something very deep is shared after Sangha, one of the practice leaders will just check in. How are you doing? We don't want to pry. We don't have any expectation that they share. We just want to make sure that it's the adult driving the car home, not the little child, right? So, yeah. So, so the bell is for everyone. I guess the other thing about our Dharma sharing is sometimes when we are inviting Dharma sharing, we can use the wording of the fourth mindfulness trainings, words that inspire self-confidence, joy, and hope. And that. Now, that's not saying you can't share your difficulty, but it is just planting the seed of well-being as we move into Dharma sharing.